Hello, Tywars 47 here, and today we're going to review V-Wars. Been watching it with my mom. It is a Netflix original comprising of 10 episodes, and today we're going to decide if it was good or if it was Pooh, a Tywars review. Yes, a new series where I review entertainment. Doesn't matter if it's fights, movies, TV shows, video games, whatever. We're going to review it on this channel. We're going to decide if it is good or if it is Pooh. V-Wars stands for Vampire Wars. Okay, kind of like Z-Wars, Zombie Wars, V-Wars, Vampire Wars. Okay, and interestingly enough, the vampires in V-Wars are actually more menacing than the vampires in your classical like vampire movies and stuff like that, other than The Strain, where it's like the tongue comes out and they drink your blood for their tongue. Anyway, classical vampires got the fangs, and then they leave little 2 puncture marks in your neck and drink all your blood. Drink all your blood. But in this show, they have their own unique vampires. They have 2 sets of vampires so far, right? One does something different to the other, okay? We're not going to go over that right now. We're going to go over that later in the video when I get to spoilers. Right now, I'm just going to give you, if you haven't watched it before, you're going to look at this random Yahoo who's not very sophisticated, and I'm going to tell you what I think about it and whether you should go watch it so you can avoid spoilers, because I'm a team player. Okay. Anyway, they got their own little unique vampire thing going on. There's one question that you may have about the vampires that don't get asked. However, if you think about the plot, pretty much common sense, you'll be able to answer that question. I'm going to go over it in the spoilers, what I'm talking about. But they have their own unique, more menacing vampires. I would rather run into one of those classical vampires than a vampire that's on this show. However, well, I'm not gonna get into it. We'll go over that later in the episode, in the video. Okay, so main plot. We're gonna go over the main plot. Is it interesting? Yes. The overarching thing: humans versus vampires. Incident happens. Vampirism spreads throughout the community. Now we gotta have humans versus vampires. Okay? That plot concept is good, and they keep it in mind throughout the episodes. There's good pacing throughout the episodes. There's, like, not much filler. There are some side plots, but it's not too bad. And the main plot itself is interesting enough to where you want to come back and watch the next episode, which is, you know, a show needs to survive. If they want to keep the viewership up, that's Netflix want to keep the viewership up. They want their show to pull the numbers to become successful enough to get a second season. Gotta get people to watch the next episode, and I will say that this show does do that. It's not a strong pull, but there is a pull there where you want to find out what happens next. The whole main plot of humans versus vampires, if you're into that, that's pretty much where it succeeds at. Makes it interesting. The solutions that they come up with, how to deal with the vampires, the problems that the vampires create, that is the whole interesting narrative right there. And there will be questions that you want answered throughout the main plot, and they reward you by watching the show, that later on in the show they'll answer the questions. Like, there's only one question that I can think of. Well, actually, till the ending. We'll get to that later. There's actually one question that I can think of that they didn't answer, which actually came to the vampires themselves. But like I said, I'll go over it in the spoiler section. The rest of the time, they'll answer questions that will pop into your brain. Well, why doesn't this faction do this? Why doesn't this faction do that? Oh, why did this faction betray this other betray itself? Or whatever goes on there. All those questions and answers, and it tries to blur the morality between the human faction and the vampire faction. And it does that to some extent, actually. It does blur. There's a side plot that kind of de-blurs it. We'll get into that later. But the questions that you'll have that makes you think that they're all jerks and dummies and stuff like that, they will answer them later on. And it'll try to blur the black and white of the situation between the vampires and the humans. Characters. The characters in the film. Not very good. It's not that they're horrendous or that the acting is too bad. It's the fact that they're just not interesting. You don't really care about them. That's my big gripe with the characters, is that, like, who cares? Like, that's pretty much how it is. Like, you don't really care about them. All you care about is the overarching vampires in the community, eating people, humans trying to defuse the situation. And that's pretty much the story that you're invested in, because there's a lot of moving parts and different people doing stuff. But as for actually having a connection to one certain person and being like, oh, that person's awesome, no, not really. You're not really going to get that in the film. It's more of what's happening as a whole that's going to drive you interest in this series, not as much the characters. And because the characters are weak, the side plots are also weak. The side plots that deal with their own personal struggles, the family, stuff like that. Don't really care too much about those side plots. The side plots are weak. There's actually 2 side plots that are okay, but one is just cut short completely out. Just randomly cut short. Didn't like that. And then the other one started off good, dipped, and then came back to finish strong. But other than that, the characters were weak. And I have a big gripe with how important people coincidentally have certain relationships with each other. Okay? That kind of ruins it for me. It makes me sit back and be like, what are the odds of that? You know, for these people to be so important in the role of humans versus vampires, and them all to have some sort of relationship with each other. That kind of kills it for me. It just seems so convenient. It's pretty much how that goes. But other than that, what you want is the vampires, and then the overarching theme of humans trying to stop the vampires. And it does a good job of that. However, the characters suck. Too many coincidental relationships. They do a good job of answering the plot holes further down the line. But the ending is just almost ruins the show. The ending is terrible. Okay? Not gonna lie to y'all right now. Just be ready for a poo-pah ending. Some of y'all people may like it, but it is a major setup for season 2. Whenever get this feeling that they could plausibly wrap up the whole series within season 1 and then move on to a new idea. I'll get to the spoilers later, but the ending is bad. The coincidental relationships, bad decision making. It's not good. It's not good. And because of that, okay, the show being decent, characters being bad, side plots being poo, I'm stuck somewhere in the middle. I'm going to have to give this TV show that's based off the board game Tywars, I'm going to have to give it a wet fart. That's right, a wet fart. We've had some dry misfires throughout the series, but then at the end, we got the wet fart. But the underwear is still salvageable, if you get what I mean. They have to pull off a good season 2. Otherwise, I say that you can just end it in season 2. Like, literally, you feel like you can, halfway through, I feel like they could end it in season 1. And I feel like that they should probably end it in season 2. Unless they manage to pull off something awesome, but chances of that happening, I don't know. The cast they have and the way it went, I don't know. Anyway, so I give this TV series a wet fart. The underwear is salvageable. If you want to watch the series, it depends. If you're into vampires, go for it. If you have people that want to watch it with you, go for it. Otherwise, you can miss it. I'm just gonna be honest with you. You can miss it and be okay. You can watch it and be okay. If we're gonna put it on an actual 1 to 10 scale, I'll give it a 6. I'll give it a 6, slightly above average. But it's my wet fart. It's a wet fart. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you wanted the non-spoiler review, now, if you want the spoiler review, here it comes. Okay, let me change my notes. Spoilers. It starts off well enough, right? Fane and Swan go to this Arctic region to go find the disease that ends up being, that alters people's junk DNA. Pretty much, if you have the certain gene within your junk DNA and you get exposed to this virus that they find out in the Arctic, well then, you get transformed into a vampire. And the vampires are actually pretty cool. They got 2 kinds of vampires in this series. You got one, which is like this alpha predator that just straight up eats people, and like the whole mouth changes and gets like fangs like everywhere and all that. And then they got the second type of vampire, which is your more classic vampire. Just the fangs, the classic fangs come out, and then they inject people with a toxin that causes them to become docile and lethargic, so that way they can just drink those people's blood. They don't straight up kill them, while the other ones that we talked about straight up eat people. Okay, and that's pretty cool. But the thing I was talking about earlier with the vampires, that these vampires are a new species, which they tell you, but they're not undead. So pretty much, if a vampire attacks you and then you stabbed it in the throat with a knife, unless you cut the head clean off, normally that wouldn't work. But with these vampires, that would. If you cut their jugular, they'd die. Pretty much. Shot them in the brain, headshot, they'd die. They're more resilient. They do heal pretty quickly from wounds, but they die like a normal human being if you get them in a kill shot or a fatal organ area. You'll get them. The side plots I was talking about, right? We had this. The side plots I was talking about. There's this guy by the name of Billy, right? And he was actually an interesting character. He was crazy. He was a jerk. He was a vigilante. He was going and killing vampires. And he was actually one of the more interesting side plots here. Somebody that I was actually sitting there like, I want to see more of this guy. And you know what they do? You know what they do? They shoot him in the eyeball. They shoot him in the eyeball. They take probably their most interesting character at that time, and they kill him off for this FBI agent by the name of Jimmy. Okay? Not cool. Like, that was literally the best part, or the most interesting part of the show on your side plots when it comes to actually the characters, one of your more interesting characters. He got killed. The other interesting character was a girl by the name of Mila. Was it Mila? Mila. And she got changed by her sister who used her. And she becomes kind of like a vigilante herself and a vampire hunter, which kind of unblurs the morals that they had, the black and white between the humans and the vampires, because vampires weren't allowed to kill animals, right? Whenever I was watching the show, I was thinking, why don't they just kill animals? They're being jerks. Well, come to find out, animal blood doesn't do it for them. Only human blood does. But Mila, being the awesome lady that she is, goes and gets it from a blood bank. She goes and gets the blood from a blood bank and drinks it. Even though it's not as good as fresh blood, she chooses to do the right thing. So the show works hard to blur the line, and then this Mila side point actually unblurs it to the point where you're just like, oh, these other vampires are buttholes. Let's kill them. You kind of with the DNS, like, let's just kill them. But anyway, because they're being jerks. Anyway, the Mila side plot was cool. It started off with her getting infected, her becoming a vampire vigilante, her doing the right thing, and then eventually with this love relationship that Didn't do it for me. It was kind of anticlimactic, kind of boring. And then she goes back up to confronting her sister Danny at the end of the movie, or the film, the series, confronting Danny at the end of the series, which went back to being interesting after the romantic relationship ended. So Mila was the second interesting side plot. And then you have the whole overarching side plot with Swan. Swan trying to find the cure with DNS. Of course, there's people, which is the Department of National Security. And then there's people in DNS like the head honcho and Nicholas who just want to kill the vampires. And then there's O'Hagan who wants to help Swan find the cure for all the vampires. And of course, DNS gets O'Hagan killed. They want to kill the vampires. And then there's Gordeau, right? Gordeau, who takes in the Dr. Swan, gets him out of DNS, right? Works with the FBI, Jimmy, the guy who kills Billy, and then gets him out of DNS, and then works with Gordeau. And Gordeau actually has a product called Blood Sub that pretty much the vampires are allowed to eat it, and then it has an enzyme that actually quells their hunger, so that way they don't have to kill humans anymore. Right? So literally by the middle of season 1, you're like, that's it. We don't have to have this quarrel or conflict, humans versus vampires. They got it solved. And this is where the ending gets retarded. We're gonna get there later. But anyway, it's like, this quarrel's been solved, okay? We don't necessarily have the cure, but we have Blood Sub, and we have the registered bloods, right? They made a deal. Killing vampires would be considered murder. The vampires killing humans would be considered murder, right? They made this pact. They're going to give them Blood Sub. Pretty much, we reach this truce, and then while the truce is happening, Dr. Swan and scientists can pretty much go make the cure, is what my inference is anyways, that they can make the cure while this is happening. They pretty much made a truce. They solved the problem, okay? And I was talking about the bloods, right? So the humans over here working for a cure, a way to save the vampires, right? A way so that they can survive and have to feed off the humans, right? The humans are over here doing that, and then some humans want to kill the vampires, putting the vampires into camps, you know? Into camps, killing them, and putting people who aren't vampires also in these internment camps. So we have that going on. And then over here with the vampires, we have the Bloods. And we have Patient Zero, who's Michael Fane. Being Patient Zero, he became the leader of this faction of vampires. And they call themselves the Bloods. Instead of vampires, they call themselves the Bloods. So you got the DNS versus the Bloods. And then you got Gordeau making a treaty with the Bloods. That's pretty much how the conflict of season 1 is. And eventually, right, they make the pact that I was talking about. They make the pact between the humans and the vampires, right? The humans and the vampires can't kill each other, and the Blood Sub and all that. And then somebody taints the Blood Sub. Somebody taints the Blood Sub, and it kills like 20,000 vampires, okay? Somebody taints the Blood Sub, it kills 20,000 vampires. This is at the ending of the series, and the Bloods get mad about it, and they're like, okay, we gotta kill the humans, and then they want to revolt against Michael Fane. They revolt against Michael Fane. We don't know if he really kills them off. They at least put him in a van and drive him away and then claim that they killed him. And then Danny gets shot by Mila. Danny was second in charge to Fane and Fane's lover. But I feel like I'm forgetting something. There's some context that I'm missing here. Blood Sub gets, Blood Sub gets tainted, and then come to find out, it's most likely tainted by DNS, Department of National Security, who lost Swan to this politician, Gordeau. And Gordeau's the one who made the deal between the humans and the Bloods in the first place, and DNS wanted to kill the Bloods, as we talked about. But before that, okay, we're gonna go into why this is the worst ending and the history one of the worst endings that you can have for a good show, or a decent show. Okay, we're going to a bad ending. So, DNS gets outed for putting Bloods in internment camps. The Bloods made it public through this media source that we really didn't talk about because no one cares. It's kind of important, but not really. Because you don't really care about the characters in it. I don't even remember what the reporter's name is. She had like a lover by the name of Jurgen. But anyway, the Bloods said that they had an internment camp, and then Dr. Swan ratted DNS out for kidnapping his wife because they kidnapped his ex-wife. And like literally kidnapped her and had her there at the hearing. Like they had a cliffhanger before the next episode where it's like, okay, he's about to do the hearing in the court. And then all of a sudden, Nicholas, the guy who works for DNS, shows up with his ex-wife and then sits down in the pew. And I'm over here like, hot dog. I'd literally be able to turn and be like, that goober over there kidnapped my wife. Right? I was thinking, this wouldn't be a hard decision to make if you saw that. You'd just be like, okay, they kidnapped my wife. There is internment camps. They do want to kill the vampires. And they showed some drama for that, and then they did it. They did it exactly that way. They're good about actually answering the questions in a way that you'd think, or addressing problems in the way that you'd think would make sense. He calls Nicholas out for kidnapping his ex-wife. He calls DNS out for the internment camps. He calls DNS out, pretty much gives them public shame, makes them look bad, right? And then DNS goes on later, trying to get approval from the president by tainting blood sub. Okay? Killing 20,000 vampires. Alexa, don't give me lip. Alright, killing 20,000 vampires. Oh my. And so they taint blood sub and kill 20,000 vampires, right? And then Michael Fane, before this, right? Michael Fane actually goes to a party knowing, because of Dina informed him that the president's daughter is a 2-time college dropout and she likes to party, and that Dina could get Fane to the president's daughter. And the president's daughter has the gene, because now they test people for the gene to know if they'll turn or not. The president's daughter has the gene that will turn them into a vampire. Okay? So Michael Fane manages to get into this party because Adina goes up to the president's daughter, dances with her, and then kisses her on the mouth. Right? They kiss each other on the mouth, and I'm over here thinking, what is wrong? First of all, what's wrong with the president's daughter? Like, why would you do that? And secondly, he takes off his mask and shows it to the security camera, so that way he knows so that way the president knows Michael Fane was here, and he's the one that turned your daughter, right? So fast forward to the ending that I'm trying to cover. I'm forgetting all this context, and I'm trying to fill you all in now before I get to the ending. Okay, blood sub, 20,000 vampires died. DNS was like, this is the worst. I don't care if you hate Obama, if you hate Trump. This president of the United States, from the little I know about him, is the worst president in the history of the world. I have no idea what his problem is, but he is an anus tart. A straight up anus tart. They probably live in communist America, okay? Probably live in communist America. I don't even know what to do, okay? So, the head of DNS, who should have been fired, right? His credibility's gone. He's been shown to be a murderer, all this stuff, a hateful person. He should be fired. Calls the president, because he still has his position, and is like, I want full takeover of the situation between the humans and the Bloods. So what does the president do? He's like, yeah, Michael Fane turned my daughter. And yeah, I think you should kill all of them. Yeah, you can have it. You can have it. What? You are the president of the United States. that deal between the humans and the Bloods before it went to law, it had to go to you. And you, being ahead of all of it, should have seen the results of the blood sub because Jiro, before then, said that it was tested. And her daughter, Amelie, also has the gene, and they feed her the blood sub. And she's fine. You should have seen the results. You should have had your scientists testing it, and whenever you saw that 20,000 vampires died, that it was Dirty Pooh. Worst president ever. But what does he do? He's like, yeah, we're going to take out Gro. We're going to get Michael Fane back for me being a bad parent. Right? That's my daughter's fault, but okay. Just as much my daughter's fault as Michael Fane's fault. She should have been focusing on college. Okay? And then, what? I didn't even bother to do the research on the blood sub. So obviously Godot tried to do all this. Or whatever. I'm not... Shut up, Alexa. Like, I don't even know the president's logic on this. He was terrible. Terrible logic. Terrible logic. You would know that there was Dirty Pool. Nicholas and that one guy would be fired. You'd literally be firing all the executives and the boss people in the DNS. They make you look bad. The people's opinion's bad. What would you do? You'd get rid of them. That person wouldn't even have the right to call the president anymore. And then, okay, the Bloods kill Michael Fane because Michael Fane's like, nah, they wouldn't lie to me because Swan, his best friend, well, I'm going to go into the coincidental relationships in just a minute. His friend, okay, wouldn't lie to him. And Swan and who's on Godot's side, who's the head scientist, whose best friends were Fane, who's the leader of the Bloods, came together and made this law, these details. Bloods drink blood sub. They don't kill humans. Humans don't kill Bloods. That's murder. That's wrong. That's pretty much the deal that they came up with. Together. And he's like, nah, my friend wouldn't lie to me. So what do the Bloods do? They're like, okay, forget this guy. We're going to kill him. So they pretty much load him into a van and go out and execute him. Okay? And then it's revealed at the end of the series that Nicholas, the guy that helped put them in the internment camps, is now their leader. That would be like if all of a sudden we got mass message from the Jews and during World War II that all of a sudden they chose Hitler as their leader. What? That would make no sense. No way would they do that. No way. I don't understand. The ending was so poo. That's what's wet fart. We had dry misfires throughout the entire show, and then we get the wet fart at the end. It's like it just turds just flew everywhere. It was bad. The ending was bad. Anyway, the relationships. I know I was going to talk about the coincidental relationships, okay? Swan and Fane were best friends. Fane gets infected. Swan is a scientist, okay? Them wanting Swan to help with the virus makes sense in the first place, but Fane being patient zero, okay, because he's patient zero and he's Michael Swan's friend, and he went there to help Swan with whatever was going on. I don't know if it was like a research failure. I think that's where it was a research incident, and they went to go figure out what happened, and then come to find out they got exposed. But Swan didn't have the gene, so he didn't turn, and Fane did have the gene, so he turned. So they're best friends. They were brothers, and then all of a sudden Swan becomes the main player for the humans, and then Fane becomes the main player for the vampires. He was patient zero. Of course, we know that that's not exactly how that would work in real life. Pretty much whoever turns into a vampire and has the most charisma would pretty much be the hero. And they'd be like, oh, you're the first one, cool, join my group. Anyway, that's a coincidental relationship. And then all of a sudden, they figure out that Swan's son has the same gene as the vampires, and he gets sick, and they get scared that he's going to turn. But then all of a sudden, he doesn't. He's fine. So all of a sudden, they're like, oh, he's immune. He possibly is immune. So it's coincidental enough that the two main people on each faction are brothers, best friends. Now the immune person is the main character's son. Tell me that doesn't seem so coincidental to you. It does to me. Like, I'm just here like, why? I don't know. Did you get that lucky? Dr. Swan's lucky. He's pretty much got all the answers in his lap. I mean, they got blood sub. They have the immune child. Pretty much, I guess season 2 is going to be them trying to get the original virus back, the Prometheon or Prometheus and whatever it's called. So that whole first season was pretty much the Bloods building their numbers, trying to infiltrate the humans, stuff like that. And then the humans trying to figure out a way to stop the Bloods and get them normal or to kill them off. And then in season 2, Nicholas is the leader. Everything fell through. And then, yeah, the bad guy becomes the good guy. I mean, the bad guy becomes the bad guy for the Bloods. He injects himself with the virus. So he becomes a vampire, Nicholas. And now, starting season 2, it's going to be the full-blown war, humans versus vampires. Honestly, they could have finished it in season 1 and then moved on to some different idea in season 2, something like that. I just had this feeling of like, you know, they have all the solutions already. They literally could just finish it because the Bloods would literally have to be a bunch of poop heads in order to not take this, like, take these deals, like the blood sub, something like that. The president would have to be a poop head to keep the DNS around, and then to like transfer all authority to the DNS to kill the vampires. It would be pretty much both the factions sucked. At the end, you realize both of them aren't any good. So I give this series a wet fart out of 10. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comment section below. If you want more of my content, hit that subscribe button, and y'all have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye!